with 1 week left, almost exactly 1 week left before the release of the early access of Midnight, it is time to draw some conclusions on the predicted performance of the specs at the release of this season. So we have to draw some tier lists on the state of the specs planned to be released soon. Obviously, it's a bit of a gaslight since the expansion might be releasing in a week, but the season is still more than a month away, simply because the expansion comes out next week, but the season comes out the 24th of March, with both Mythic Plus and the Mythic Raid, so it's still quite a ways away. But we started weeks ago with things like this one, this pseudo tier list. This wasn't about the power of the specs, but more about how complete did we feel each spec was, regardless of their performance, how ready they were basically to be released, and how many of them still needed some work. That was a kind of tier list. Then we had the mixed bag one, the one where we were dividing the specs in which of the two activities they were performing better at or best at in the beta, whether if it was Mythic Plus or the Raid, or if they were still doing well in both. But after these reach arounds of the situation on the specs, we have to go for the complete version now, the actual tier list, to then compare, of course, with how things will shape up for the release of the season. Now, it's been a couple of tuning passes since we checked last time, the most recent one 5 days ago at this point, which changed quite a few things again, especially for the category we are looking at for today, the first one being the healers. Now, for both of our categories, both Mythic Plus and the Raid, we have to start with the first one because it's the outlier at the moment. It has been basically throughout most of the beta in both categories, and that is Restoration Druid. Restoration Druid is the clear S tier, has been the clear leader in terms of power level. You can look at the popularity as well in Mythic Plus, you will find the same thing. Restoration Druid is the to-go healer right now in the beta. They have received, talking about some of the changes in the balance tuning, they have received a nerf to their Mythic Plus throughput value recently in order to slightly compensate for that in the Raid, where they weren't nearly as all-powerful as they are in Mythic Plus. One of the major benefits Resto Druid has also received, as we will see for the other healers, is the fact that the Mythic Plus meta has been shifted by Blizzard significantly more compared to the previous couple of expansions towards doing more damage rather than staying alive. One of the trends for the past few seasons of Mythic Plus was that your cap in how much you could climb in Mythic Plus was you need to stay alive. Eventually, you will reach a key level where you could have timed the key with 4 minutes left with your damage, but you can't get there because you just die. There are mechanics that just one-shot you, and you just reach the point where you can't get past those mechanics. This has gone a bit more away now in this expansion, way more mechanics now. There is a slew of mechanics that have been changed or added to, rather than being a one-shot, rather than hitting you for all of your HP instantly, will hit you for 70% of your HP, and then 70% is a dot over time, over 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Some mechanics are just straight up dots. The big hits of dangerous trash packs are no longer single hits that could one-shot you, they become dangerous dots. And then there are mechanics that instead of now hitting a single player, which once you scale high enough could turn into a one-shot, instead now they hit 2 players, which allows them to hit for less because they are hitting 2 players instead of 1 now. So the danger or the necessity of needing super strong externals, for example, or ways to survive like we have seen in Season 2 Discipline Priest, because of their major absorb shields becoming very powerful, right? This has gone more away now in Midnight. Throughput is more relevant. Also the ability to keep up players in those 2-3 second windows of them taking this dot damage after being hit. So very good and very strong and quick and snappy spot healing is very good now, because players will stay alive after being hit. You just need to heal them fast. And guess who is fast at healing players quickly in single target, nice chunky heals? It's Resto Druid, thanks to their severely roided up growth over multiple expansions. It has kept them to be still very, very strong in Mythic Plus. Now, the raid value, they are not S tier, not because there is a healer above them. There is actually no healer above them. There is no healer right now poised to look like an S tier healer in the raid. Resto Druid is still very, very good. Even if we stop, if we limit ourselves to the raid testing, which was like 3 balance tunings ago, Resto Druid was still doing more than fine. as their archetype healer of very good consistent throughput across the raid, spreading hots across the raid and still having good spot healing thanks to the aforementioned regrowth. Is a good mix of healing styles that you can have in the raid. They're not particularly excelling now in cooldowns because they lost their ramp, they lost flourish and the general 1 minute windows of their flourish ramp, but they would still be serviceable as this sort of jack of all healing styles pick in the raid. So not focused on complete raid healing only with very poor ability to spot heal like Preservation Evoker, or complete spot healing with much poorer ability to heal, you know, a wider set of players, like for example Resto Shaman was. That is what is still giving Resto Druid their value in the raid. Now following them, there is Preservation Evoker. Preservation Evoker does get into the A tier when it comes to Mythic raiding. In fact, it's the closest one to being S tier still, but we said we're not putting any healer as the particular outlier in the raid. I guess at the best we can put them in front of Resto Druid in the A tier, while in Mythic Plus they stay at the bottom. So why the massive change between their value in the raid versus the one in Mythic Plus? Well, take everything we just applied to Resto Druid about their power in Mythic Plus and just revert it when it comes to Preservation Evoker. Preservation Evoker's biggest weakness is the spot healing, the ability to very quickly, effectively and snappily heal someone back up, which is still quite mediocre. Now it has been significantly improved over time with constant buffs to Living Flame and the value of that single target heal, but it's still extremely poor compared to something like Regrowth, or even something like Word of Glory, or even something like Serenity and Flesh Heal for Holy Priest. It's still not very good. Sure, you still have your Golden Hour plus Echo Reversion combo you can use for massive healing. Technically, it is actually the strongest spot healing on a tank because of the sheer amount of damage a tank is taking over 5 seconds, so the massive value you can gain from Golden Hour. But it doesn't work nearly as well when this damage is being taken by a DPS. So the single hit plus the single dot that follows the hit that it's about to kill them in 3 seconds, that's not nearly as good in terms of spot healing. So they lose value in Mythic Plus because still there are issues with proper, very effective spot healing, while in the raid they're still much better. Despite having lost many cooldowns that what kept Evoker as one of the mainstays in Mythic raiding meta for 2 expansions now, it has happened often for them to be viable because of their burst healing. The powerful, very powerful cooldowns they could line up, whether it was the Communion ramp, Dreamflight, Stasis combos, and then with the addition of Flame Shapers, Consume Flame, even more combos for raid healing. Of course, you still have your Rewind, right? Now you lost a bunch of these. Consume, Burst combos are gone, Emerald Communion ramp is gone, one of Stasis or Dreamflight are gone now because they are a choice node. Rewind has been nerfed to go back to being a 3-minute cooldown, so you have lost a lot of that, but you have gained now even more consistent throughput healing. Your spreading of reversion is going to have very good value in the next expansion, even more value because of your Apex talents putting damage reduction on your reversion. 2% damage reduction is going to be very valuable in cutting edge, high level raiding, to be able to reduce the damage by 2% on most of your raid that you will be able to cover with reversion. So their raid value is still very high, just their Mythic Plus value is still lagging behind because of these issues with single target or even just a couple of targets healing, even despite the multiple attempts of buffing the spec, the Living Flame buffs, the fact that now Lifebind nerfed from being a group buff, now it's only a 2-target buff, at least it lasts 8 seconds, so you have more time to keep up a single other player, but these are still not as good changes for the spec in Mythic Plus to be able to have strong spot healing and single target healing for this new style of healing in Mythic Plus. Now after them we switch to Holy Priest. Holy Priest gets into the B tier below Preservation and Resto Druid when it comes to the raid, whereas they still stay next to Preservation when it comes to Mythic Plus. Now, this requires some context because we just dogged down Preservation down there because they have very poor spot healing, so they lack what is needed to be good in Mythic Plus. Meanwhile, Holy Priest does have spot healing, so why are they there? I guess if they don't have the problem of Preservation, what keeps them to be so low? Well, Preservation, while they do lack spot healing, they still have excellent group-wide healing and tools to constantly heal the group just fine. What they lack is the spot healing part of their toolkit. Meanwhile, Holy Priest, while they might have good enough spot healing, definitely good enough spot healing in Mythic Plus, is the rest of the stuff that they are lacking. They focus so much on single target healing that they even forgo their other holy word for AoE. Sanctify is being removed just to make your single target Serenity even stronger. Blizzard has tried, and after multiple tries they have been able to make Prayer of Healing a pretty hard hitting spell for Holy Priest, but it's conditional. It's not that it's spammable or usable that often to have that much value. You are still ultimately a priest, which means you have very little crowd control, very little help to the rest of your group. You're still easily the squishiest out of the other healers. You offer also a very poor, more or less, external in Guardian Spirit. So ultimately, while unlike Preservation Evoker, your spot healing is much better, the rest of your toolkit for Mythic Plus is not really that good. This is not as much of a problem in the raid, which is why they look better. They are a much more possible option as being the spot healer you want to bring in your raid comp. You know, if you want to have a raid comp traditionally formed by at least two healers that will focus on raid healing, so spread wide targets, many targets being hit by abilities, and then two other healers that focus more on single target healing. Here and there, you know, the 4 or 5 players being hit by a mechanic, you have these healers that can hit them individually for much better and much more efficiently than the raid healers. Holy Priest can fill this niche much better in the raid. Also, this is the first time we mentioned this because we didn't have the need to for Preservation and Resto Druid. There is also the comp that must be taken in mind for both Mythic Plus and the raid, which is, do you have someone in your class that is bound to be doing well in the next expansion? Because for Preservation, we didn't have to worry about this because we know that Augmentation is bound to be doing very well, for example, in Mythic Plus. They are still decent in the raid. Devastation is doing very well in the raid. So the possibility, the idea of Preservation getting a free raid spot because you want the buffs, the time spiral, etc., isn't there because you kind of know more or less for sure that you will have DPS evokers in the raid. For Restoration Druid, it gets closer because both Balance and Feral are doing poorly, but Guardian is looking kind of good. They have insane single target damage as a tank, and they might be serviceable to be played in the raid. But the one that clearly has the advantage is Holy Priest. Since Shadow is doing okay, then it does become a significant possibility that you will get a healing priest in your raid comp because you want the priest buff. So one of your priest healers will have a very high chance of making it in, even regardless of their performance, unless it is so much worse comparatively to Shadow Priest that it's better to bring a Shadow Priest instead. Now, to stay equal with everything, Discipline Priest is going to join Holy Priest when it comes to Mythic Plus, and it's going to join Holy Priest when it comes to the raid. So, what is perhaps possibly a surprise for Discipline Priest to be also weak in Mythic Plus? But we touched on this weeks ago when we were guessing the power level of the healers, and we put both Holy Priest and Discipline Priest as a potential meta in the raid, rather than a meta pick in Mythic Plus. So besides the fact that with the tuning Discipline Priest has been nerfed, the Oracle version, which is what you play, has been nerfed, there is the fact that they have the same problem they had in Season 2 when they were meta, which was their throughput. But what saved them in Season 2? In Season 2 saved them that they had every 5 to 6 seconds available to them some like 8, 9, if it create like 12 million HP absorb shields to throw on players, when you had like 10 million HP total in that season. So they could basically double your HP with the shield. This could make up for your lack of HPS. The fact that you could prevent players from dying. Remember, we're also talking about a season where one-shots and, you know, super heavy, unavoidable hits were the meta, and Discipline Priest was there to save you. You had to have a pocket Discipline Priest if you wanted to be meta as a Balance Druid, for example, which you were in that season. But this is gone though in this expansion. First of all, your atonement healing, which is already your weak spot, your throughput, has been weakened even more, so you have even less consistent healing, and you lost the absorb shield power level. It's still there, You still have the Will and Woe Absorb Shield buff. Oracle still buffs your Absorb Shields, you can still use them, and now they technically become even better because when your Apex Talent turns your next Power Shield into Void Shield, you're gonna hit 3 players with your shield instead of only 1, so it gets better. But your throughput has suffered as a result, especially when it comes to smaller targets. Yes, when it comes to things raid-wide, which is why we are putting them higher up, it's easier than ever to maintain Atonement, even now with Evangelism giving you the instacast radiances. The whole difficulty around the ramping perhaps might not even be necessary for you to ramp as a Disc Priest in the raid, but just constantly throw out your Void Shields to tag 3 players, land a single Radiance, so you have 8 players tagged and then heal that way, without even having to worry about ramping. So it's been made easier and more straightforward and consistent in the raid, but in Mythic Plus it has suffered. The actual throughput of Atonement healing, even after the recent like 3% buff with the damage conversion changes, the output at the moment is too low for Mythic Plus. The shield value is still there, although much weakened compared to Season 2, but the output for Disc, especially Mythic Plus wise, has not kept up for now compared to this last expansion. Now the next one in line is the forgotten, it feels like Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman does go at the bottom in the raid, but does go further up when it comes to Mythic Plus, because the hurtiest thing that happened with Resto Shaman in the last few weeks of tuning was the removal of Whispering Waves. This was their to-go playstyle since it was added and then buffed multiple times in this expansion to raid heal. You would spread as many Riptides as you could, and then you would spam Healing Wave, and Healing Wave would splash to the players with Riptide. You would then also soak them all up, portion of those healing done inside of Cloudburst, and then pop Cloudburst. You lost Cloudburst, you lost Whispering Waves, and you got nothing in return. You got a changed, updated Ascendance, which is okay, but Ascendance is a major cooldown, quite long in cooldown as well. It can't shape your entire healing playstyle. So now you are basically naked in the raid. You don't really have an identity as a shaman. Your raid healing is terrible. Your spot healing is still good because your single heals still hit very hard, but you don't have the rest of what the other healers, for example, with good single target healing that we mentioned, like Holy Priest or Restoration Druid, have. So this puts you quite low in the raid. While in Mythic Plus, because Whispering Waves wasn't nearly as relevant or as necessary to be doing good spot healing, you are still better off. As a Shaman, just like we mentioned, for Holy Priest being extremely bare in extra stuff, Shaman is filled with extra stuff. Even with some of the pruning, with things they have lost in this expansion, they still have a bunch of other stuff. They have the raid buff is still there, AoE stun, they are the only healer with an interrupt now in the game. You still have the very crucial, it was also in the raid, but still in Mythic Plus, the crucial Ancestral Vigor to give you your basically permanent max HP buff in Mythic Plus to all of your party. So all of these things are still very valuable. Playing Farseer with your single target value in Mythic Plus is still very strong, but not as much in the raid. Now, next in line is Mistweaver. Mistweaver joins Shamans at the bottom when it comes to the raid, and then goes out with Shaman in the middle-ish of the pack when it comes to Mythic Plus. Now, Mistweaver is hard to quantify because of the amount of bugs they have had so far and things that just didn't work properly in the beta in both Mythic Plus and the raid. But when it comes to the raid, they have a few problems. Now, while their entire kit has not changed, if you're playing with Yulon and you want to be a caster in the raid, so you spread Renewing Mist, you cleave healing with Vivify on your target with Renewing Mist, you can, prep up for your windows of damage by drinking Mana Tea to get your discount, and then you can spam Enveloping Mists around, and then you can use Vivify. That's still the same compared to last expansion, but there are problems now. Other healers have improved over time, they've gotten very good, sometimes hard carry Apex talents when you have not. Your Apex talent is garbage, especially when it comes to the raid. To way more targets is very, very poor compared to others. Trying to bring things like Soothing Mist in the raid isn't really doing too well. There are other healers that can gain like 10-15% even more healing thanks to their Apex talent. The monks are at like 5-6% right now. It's a very poor one. On top of that, for some reason, despite, as we said, your style not changing, your mana is. Now you just go out of mana. as a Mistweaver Monk. It's a big problem at the moment. It's even bigger than Season 2, even Season 1 of Resto Shaman, going very out of mana with their chain heals. This is similar with Mistweaver Monk. Their mana issues when it comes to the raid, longer fights, no time to drink in between, etc, becomes a big problem. This is not nearly as big of a problem as Mythic Plus. Because number one, in Mythic Plus, your Soothing Mist, your Apex talent, and the ability to hit a smaller number of players fit much better Mythic Plus, obviously. Number two, mana problems. You can hide your mana problems in Mythic Plus by drinking, unlike the raid, so that goes away as well. And then some of the problems you had for your caster style goes away because you play Chi in Mythic Plus. You play Fist Weaving, you do damage and then convert that into healing. This is also very good for, as we mentioned, the presence of a lot of rot damage and dots, and that's no longer being one-shots, which was a big problem for Mistweaver because they had very poor ways to save players. They had one Chi Cocoon every once in a while, right? Now though, if you have more rot damage, more time to react, to heal quickly, Mistweaver is also very good at that when it comes to lower targets. Simply targeting a single player, soothe mist a single player, spam instacast heal on them, or simply let the rot damage be healed through your Jadefire Teachings, Way of the Crane, damage conversion, is much better in Mythic Plus compared to the raid. That's why they would show up as better when it comes to Mythic Plus compared to the raid. The last that we left is Holy Paladin. Now, Holy Paladin goes all the way up when it comes to the raid, and Holy Paladin also goes almost all the way up when it comes to Mythic Plus. Now, the gap between Holy Paladin and Restoration Druid right now in Mythic Plus is just too large for them to be put next to Restoration Druid, while when it comes to the raid, they are there. They are serviceable enough to be one of the considered top healers for possible raid comps at the moment. Now, when it comes to the raid, Holy Paladin was already one of the de facto spot healers you could pick in your comp because of their Eternal Flame, Word of Glory, Holy Shock kind of spot healing, even Instacast, Infusion of Light, Flash heals, all basically single target coded. Now you have an Apex talent which further automatically targets low HP members for even better spot healing on the dangerously low HP raid members. That works very well in the raid, and it still works fine in Mythic Plus, even though you only have 5 players. This one still helps you keep up. Players that are taking damage are dropping low, as we mentioned, from those new Mythic Plus mechanics where you get hit first for a lot and then you start taking dots over time rather than being a one-shot. It works very well for this kind of Apex talent, right? You get Beacon of the Savior to jump on that player as that player takes the dot damage part of the hit, and then you heal them, empowered by this extra Beacon of the Savior Apex. They are, unlike other healers, one of the ones that have lost basically the least. Besides the whole drama around Crusader Strike, the rest is still there. You don't have to worry about not having Emerald Communion or Stasis anymore. Perhaps you don't have Flourish. None of that is a problem because you still have everything. All of your buttons are still there outside of your Crusader Strike. Perhaps the biggest hurtful change was the fact that Awakening is no longer a free proc of your wings. That's gone. And also, perhaps the best one was changing and reworking Light of Dawn to be a more consistent AoE heal, which might be now the play for you in the raid. Still not as good in Mythic Plus on lower targets. With the scaling it now has, past 5 targets, it's better in the raid. You have gotten good QLs now, with Holy Light having a massive spell power multiplier at the cost of mana, which is easier to sustain in Mythic Plus, where you can drink in between. And now with Shield of the Righteous being basically a mana regen tool for you in Mythic Plus. So you already cover what we said was very important in Mythic Plus, which was the spot healing, the strong and on-demand single target heals that you have plenty of. Your party healing is still good because you still have 2 beacons plus your Apex 3rd beacon. So at times, still healing in single target will allow you to heal 3 different players from 3 different beacons, on top of still having very good extra QOLs that a Paladin can bring in Mythic Plus. Devotion Aura for the damage reduction, Aura Mastery for more damage reduction, Blessing of Freedom or Blessing of Protection kind of utility, and cheeses, even Bubble on yourself as an immunity. So that is all still there. The spec itself has been improved in terms of throughput and QOL on that side. Some Paladins might still be annoyed that without Crusader Strike you might turn into a too boring 2-button spec, but as far as the output is going, it's looking very good in Mythic Plus, and it's still looking good in the raid. So this is what we would see right now. What we would guess right now would be the predicted power levels of the healers going into the season. Obviously, none of this matters, since by now, hopefully at least, by the time the actual season releases, there will be like 6 weeks of potential balance tuning. So some of these might swing around heavily based on what Blizzard decides. But for now, right as the expansion is about to launch, this is where the healers would be like in terms of their power level before the release of the expansion. We will see week by week, now that we have this snapshot and this benchmark of power levels, what will change, if anything will change because of the balance tuning. Otherwise, if nothing, no balance tuning will move anything by enough to change any of this, then this is what we can expect the possible power levels to be like once the season actually releases. But for today, on this Thursday, this is what we have to go through. We're starting our goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting Competitive for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, oh well, good thing we only had to talk about 7 specs for the length of this video. Imagine how long will this go on when it comes to all of the DPS.